Hiding back here in my shop is my truck camper. Right now I just use a 12 gauge extension cord plugged into either a 15 or a 20 amp outlet. One of the problems with this setup is the cord sometimes comes loose. I have the cord draped up over here so that it hopefully stays attached. So now I can eliminate this whole mess. And every time I get back from a trip, my batteries are relatively low, and I end up having to change one of the settings on my inverter charger to limit the amount of current that the charging system draws so that I don't trip the breaker. And then when I go back out camping again, I have to change that setting. So it's time to put an end to that nonsense. And what we're going to do today is install a new dedicated RV circuit on a 30 amp breaker. And what I'm going to do is mount it right in this area. And then I can use my 30 amp shore power cord and plug directly into that outlet from the truck camper. I've got everything laid out for the project. Here's my box, my outlet cover, my split tandem 30-20 breaker, a drill with a Phillips screwdriver bit. That's going to be used with these drywall screws to mount the box. And then a handful of staples, pair of wire cutters, strippers, Phillips screwdriver to drive the screws tight when I connect the wires to the outlet, a regular screwdriver to put the cover over the outlet in the box, and then a hammer to drive those staples in. The only thing I don't have here is a chunk of 10-2 wire. I've had to do a complete do-over on my circuit breaker idea. So if you look at the bus bar, it's solid. The bus bars on the bottom portion of the circuit breaker have a small slot in them, which is where the tandem breakers need to go, because the slot on the back of the tandem circuit breaker is a little bit different than a normal non-tandem circuit breaker. So if we look real close inside there, so that little notch in the middle, the body of the circuit breaker slides down over that rather than the actual contact. So up at the top there is no slot, and the contact of the circuit breaker is arranged a little bit differently, and the slot in the body of the breaker is larger to account for the longer bus bar where there is no slot. So I returned the tandem breaker that I was going to install right here because the tandem breakers won't work up on the top. And then when I pulled the cover off the breaker panel, I discovered that this 20 amp breaker was not being used. So I must have relocated that circuit down here somewhere when I added another 20 amp circuit. I don't know why I didn't just put that other 20 amp circuit up top. Anyway, so taking out that blank 20 amp breaker freed up a spot, so I went to Home Depot and bought a standard 30 amp breaker. So my new wire comes up here, neutral wire goes across here, up the side, and then connects right there. Kind of hard to see because my lighting is bad in here. But then my hot wire goes across the other side of the breaker panel and then comes up right here. And then somewhere back in here is my ground wire. Ground wire is right there. So we'll get the panel cover reinstalled and then proceed to mount the electrical box and route the wiring down to it. We're going to nail that right across here, go down the post, and then down to the box. I have my wire stapled across the top of that spacer, and then it runs down the post, and then I also have my insulation stripped off right there. So now we're going to go ahead and get that box mounted and the wire installed into the box. I use a hammer, the claw side of the hammer, to open up my worst part about a project like this is then getting the wires oriented like so in order to get your outlet jammed into the box. Lastly, we'll install our cover. I've got my big 25, maybe it's 30 foot long shore power cord out. And I actually really like this cord. It's an upgrade from the factory cord. This is a cord from Marinco. It's a company that does marine shore power cords. And they also do a bunch of RV stuff. So you can see it has a right angle connector on the end. Right now it is about 40 degrees in my shop. And you can see how flexible this cord is. The factory cords that most RV manufacturers supply with their RVs are not this flexible when they're cold, and they're ungangly and difficult to deal with in cold weather. Now if it was warm or warmer, this would be a lot easier to deal with, but this is a whole lot easier to deal with than the original black cord that my truck camper came with. And my coiled up mess of cord on the floor is tucked underneath the truck camper, next to my shop vac, which lives in the shop and pretty much stays underneath the truck camper because I don't use it very much up here. I think that should do the trick. And I do believe that pretty much wraps up this project. So we're going to go ahead and turn the breaker on. There's my cord running across the floor. And inside here I've already made the adjustment to my color control GX inverter charge unit. At 22, that's my AC input current limit. So I can pretty much leave that set like it is and not have to fiddle with it. I could run it all the way up to 30, but there's really no need to, because then I would probably turn it back down when I'm out camping. Most of the time when I camp, I don't have shore power. I'll just rely on my inverter generator right there, and we usually set the current limit to about 18 amps. So I really probably should change that just a little bit lower, but it's fine where it's at 22. Oh no, I totally screwed up the installation of this outlet. I forgot that the ground pin faces the top on these RV cords. Man, I can't believe I messed that up. Well, it's an easy fix.